welcome to the Home Assistant Podcast. Today we have our friend Phil as usual. Hey, Phil.
Hey, how you going?
Good. And we've got Josh from Josh's Smart Home. How you doing, man?
Hey, I'm good. How are you guys doing?
Good, good.
Good. And as usual, this podcast is sponsored by Home Assistant Cloud by Nabukasa. For a small monthly fee, you'll unlock powerful features like secure, effortless access to your system from anywhere, the choice of voice assistants, offsite backups, and more, all configurable from the UI with no YAML needed. It also supports the development of Home Assistant, ESP Home, and other Open Home Foundation projects. Click on the link in the description to find out more. We also want to give a shout out to our Patreon members, including our executive producers, Benny and Rob. You can help support the show and get early access to episodes, all in an ad free feed. To support the show, check out homeassistant.fm and click Patreon in the menu. All right, Josh. Once again, welcome. Thanks for making the time. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. I know we've met in real life, which we can only say for a few people. I mean, I can barely say that for Phil,
I know,
let,
right?
let alone other folks. So this is cool. It's cool having you on. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Josh, and tell us about your channel and what you do and how you got started.
Yeah, definitely. This is definitely not a full-time gig for me. I have a day job, so I do work as a project manager. I'm an inactive CPA as well. So a
Nice.
professional, career outside of this, but I had a real passion over the years for technology and like to get into all kinds of things. In the past, 25 years ago, I was doing some HTML on the side because I like to run little like Madden football leagues and have a website. I
Oh,
got
that's cool.
into yeah, and I got into all kinds of things like just VBA or loading custom ROMs on my Android devices back in the day. So building computers, all kinds of things in the history. But it didn't. It was really about 10 years ago that I got started with Smart Home, and it was when we were building a new house. In in hindsight, I would have went back and put in all the devices as we were building, but some of the some of the contractors maybe were not as open to some of the concepts and including some of these devices. So we just started with a couple at that time, and I don't think we could have started with the worst anything worse than what we did because we got the infamous MyQ garage door openers,
Oh,
and
no.
Yeah,
yes, I know.
same here, and I and
Yeah,
I loved it at the time too. And I was like, this is great.
yes.
Yeah,
And we had the we had a Honeywell Wi-Fi thermostat that integrated with absolutely nothing. So it
yeah,
was totally
yeah.
detrimental long term to our smart home. But hey, we got started. After that, I one of my cousins was into smart home tech, and he introduced me into smart things. So I got my real start in smart things, and utilizing a lot of Zigbee and Z-Wave devices. The one thing outside of those that I really fell in love with were Lutron devices. At this point, I do have those basically maxed out in my house. For the hub, it maxes out at 75, and we have 74. I just haven't pulled the
Oh
Mm.
wow.
trigger, haven't pulled the trigger on the 75th because I'm like, this is the last one unless I get another hub. So, so that includes the remotes and everything else. So we have Lutron cassetta switches all throughout the house, a lot of
Yeah.
Zigbee, Z-Wave. The Zigbee include presence sensors, motion sensors, open close sensors, water leak sensors, which are certainly really useful in our house. Z-Wave, and we have plugs obviously with Zigbee. Z-Wave, we have plugs. The big one that I like there is we have a shut-off robot for our water shut-off valve. So it actually turns the valve there. So that's pretty neat. So we have a lot of devices. Definitely, I think we're close to 100 devices on Zigbee. I know we have over, I want to say two or 300, maybe 300 devices in Home Assistant at this point because we did move over to Home Assistant eventually. Samsung Smart Things, the real frustrations there over the years were that I built these things out and then I always wanted a little bit more. So I don't know how familiar you guys are with Smart Things, but there's WebCoRE. So I went into WebCore and did all the programming and had everything working, but it's web based. And Samsung decided that they weren't going to support it anymore. Rumor has it was because of the utilization of some of the Amazon AWS servers for some of the WebCoRE stuff, but I'm not sure if that's the truth or not. So they stopped supporting that and basically didn't give everybody a whole lot of time or any alternatives to pull those in. So at that point, they burnt my system to the ground. And I was like, well, this is
Ugh.
stupid. Yeah,
Yeah.
super frustrating. So that was stupid for me. And I was like, I need to have something that I can control. And as I poked around all the Samsung, Smart Things forums, I heard a lot about Home Assistant. Obviously, in the past, I was more comfortable with doing a lot of that hands-on and troubleshooting and really technical things. But as I've matured in my life and have a lot less time, I really have moved over to a more simplistic lifestyle. So gone with the Androids and that type of thing and over to the Apple ecosystem. And I just want things that work. So Home Assistant at times when I looked at it, it was a little bit cumbersome potentially to move over to it. But I will say a couple years ago when I moved over, almost everything was in the UI, which was a huge plus for
Yeah.
me that I didn't have to go poking around everywhere. Everything integrated really quickly, and found tons of devices immediately. So the transition was way better than I expected from Smart Things. That is definitely the
Yeah.
moral of that story. But yeah, so started with Smart Things maybe 10 years ago and moved over to Home Assistant a couple years ago, maybe 2 years ago or so.
That's interesting. Did you go through like any other decision process trying to find another alternative to Home Assistant? Like, I think Home Assistant hasn't always been known for being user friendly, right? It's sort of the Android to the iOS in terms of home automation land. Did you consider like a Homey Pro or any other services out there?
Yeah, I did. Homey Pro wasn't too popular then. Originally, when I looked at Samsung Smart Things, I actually included Iris, which is Lowe's. It's a home improvement store in the US, and they had their own brand at the time. The one positive I got out of that, I did not go with their hub or anything back then, but when they stopped making their hub, they put all their Zigbee devices on clearance. So a lot of my Zigbee devices are actually Iris branded because that they just sold them for nothing, and you can go to Lowe's and stock up on them, and they were just cheap, generic, open close sensors or whatever, or motion sensors, and they worked really well back then. But when I was looking to make a switch, I did analyze other options. The one thing that really pushed me to Home Assistant was the vast array of integrations that exist here, and the user support and the community aspect. Because I didn't want to switch again, so that was my fear. Is if I go with another company like Samsung, where they are just going to abandon it or change, it's a moving target, and they don't keep their word maybe on things that we expected, or they don't live up to our expectations. Maybe is a better way to put that. I think that that was some of the things I was trying to avoid, and that's what really pushed me over to Home Assistant.
Yeah, I think that was my same theory too, right? Like the community around Home Assistant was like, this is it, right? Like everyone, it seemed to be becoming the new standard um, for everything, and I think the openness to the community and everything was just like, yep, this is where we're going, and I was like, oh, cool, I'm popping on board, all right.
Yeah. It's moving from smart thing. It's funny because I actually looked at Iris. This is when Lowe's was still in Canada, and I looked at Iris and I was like, "Oh, maybe this is something viable." So same deal, right? I was going from Smart Things and then looking on the forums and stuff, and I was like, "Okay, Home Assistant looks cool," and that was kind of my number one contender, anyways. But I did look at and evaluate it, and I was like, I don't know. I feel like this way, it's at least sitting on my at the time on my pie and I'm gonna pay a cent for it. Might as well give it a shot and see what happens, right? And then I can go. And then lo and behold, before that, I Lowe's took down the whole product line. So
Yeah. Yeah, and just to, really exhibit my level of, wanting things to just work or maybe even laziness in some instances, everything I have is running on Home Assistant Green because
right,
plug and play and didn't
Yeah.
have to do
yeah,
anything further.
Well,
yeah.
that's interesting.
That's
So you said before that you've what, like over 100 devices on Zigbee alone, and this is all running through a green. Have you found it to be too sluggish for all those devices?
No, I haven't had any issue at all. Certainly have a pretty robust, network. I I've found that the biggest key to making, Zigbee and everything work really well for me is utilizing the Aqara smart plugs because I know you guys have mentioned this in the past. Zigbee as a standard has not always been very consistent on which devices are going to communicate and work well together. But and Aqara devices, the ones that are not hard powered, hardwired devices, they seem to really be contrary in what they're going to talk to. So having those Aqara smart plugs has really made all those devices work, and it actually seems to work really well with all the other devices as well. So that's been one thing that's really helped my mesh network locally. I should I should back up one other step. Before I got into the Lutron cassetta, I had one of my main headache devices as well. I made all the wrong choices initially, and I installed the GE Jasco light switches that all will eventually fail, apparently. And
Wow.
we had well, they had Z-Wave and Zigbee. So I made sure I had a great mesh network, and I had half of each, and I strategically placed them throughout my house. I had 40 some switches, and most of them at this point have failed. The couple that didn't fail are pretty much in a box. I reinstalled two of them. Re-pushing the button to get it to resync hurt my thumb that day. I spent like 3 hours trying to get a couple switches back in onto my network because those switches are patience testing switches. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but switching over to Lutrons solved that. That also takes that load off of Home Assistant for the most part because it's just its own hub that's communicating only when you have an interaction there. So that's a lot, probably less on our Home Assistant instance because, like I said, we have 74 of those devices. We also have devices that don't actually work in Home Assistant, but I'm not counting those for any of these purposes. So yeah, we haven't had any issues at all with maintaining anything. I want to say we have about 200 automations as well. So I've been really impressed with the Home Assistant Green and the stability. I typically am one of the month late users basically on the upgrades. So I'll wait until a point 0.3 or point 0.4 of the Home Assistant operating system to upgrade. But other than that, that's the only thing I've really done. And that I talked to one of my cousin's friends that lives in the area, and that was the advice he gave me because I found out he was using Home Assistant. He relies heavily on the Shelly
Yep.
switches, but I that's
Yeah.
one I haven't gotten to work really well for me. But it's mostly probably because I try to use it in a really weird instance, which causes challenges. Um, I have a really weird device in my house. So we have like a home theater we put in, and with that, I was like, we need a popcorn machine and we need a fountain soda machine.
Of course
So
you do.
yeah,
Yeah.
so this guy was on Facebook looking around, and I found a Subway restaurant that was going out of business, and they were selling their soda machine. So we got like the full Subway soda machine, the 8 fountains with ice and all that. Um, and it has a light in it, but it's the fluorescent light. So I don't know if it's a capacitor or what it is, but it basically has to get so much power before it can actually turn it on. And that's
Yeah.
really difficult for the smart switches to handle that because they think that there's an issue and then they stop it is what happens. So
Right.
that's the one that I've struggled with, and I've tried to use the Shelly. But again, it's probably my instance of usage that's the issue, and not the Shelly.
Can you rip it out and put an LED strip or something in?
Yeah, I think so. I
Yeah.
haven't really prioritized it is probably the problem.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
plus I gotta figure out the wiring and that. A lot of the wiring and everything is probably beyond my normal abilities.
Yeah.
I don't live in Australia where I'm restricted from doing anything. Us Americans, we just do whatever the heck we want and we'll
Yeah.
figure it out later. but
So
but yeah, that's probably what I need to do is put LEDs or something in it.
so on that, like you've done a theater room, you've got the popcorn machine and now the soda machine. Are you automating the theater room then? Like have you got some cool automations around that?
I don't have too many actually in the theater. A lot of it's because I am concerned about predicting what we want to do. My biggest key when I'm putting automations together is that nobody ever complains about them because the wife acceptance factor and everybody living in my house, their acceptance factor is the most important thing. Because if I burn that bridge, I'm not coming back. we have 4 acres of property. That's where you're going to be looking for me because I'm not coming back.
Well, I guess that's also it, right? Like you want the home, the smart home, to be in the background. You don't want it to be the focus of everything, right? And it should be making people's lives easier and not hindering or getting in their way. And I struggle with that all the time too, right? Like even from a matter of opening and closing blinds. If someone's opened a blind because they want to see outside, but then an automation kicks in and closes it because for whatever rules I've put in place, it's annoying, right? It annoys myself, when I'm opening and closing doors and the blinds are going up and down, right?
Yeah. Yeah, the reason I know most of our automations are really good is the only time I realize that we have them is when I go to the hotel and I walk into the bathroom and I go to the sink and realize I'm standing in the dark and I have to turn around and find
Yep.
Yeah.
where the light switch is. So
Yeah. Yeah.
that's the best is when you're like, oh yeah, the light switch. I forgot about that. So in the theater, the one that I do have, we have like a theater sign that has our last name and like theater outside the theater. So I
Nice.
utilize the lights in the theater to determine whether that should be on or not, and some other things just whether or not they should be on, but don't have too many. I do plan on incorporating some of the presence sensors. I figure if I have enough redundancy, then I'll prevent any issues because
Yeah.
that's my issue. Is
Yeah.
like
That's
if
fair.
we have 4 rows of seating, so if we have 4 rows of seating, how many do I need to make sure that there's no issues? Or maybe I also prolong the period of time. So no presence in for an hour or something like that. And then start shutting things off. I have a mini split behind me, and I did use a Lincoln Link IR blaster to incorporate that. So if I finalize all the presence information in the theater, I can also have that turned on or off or monitor temperature, humidity type of thing, and also
Yes.
trigger it that way.
Yeah, that's a good use case actually. Yeah, I remember like one of the when I had before we got central heating like ducted in a new control system, I would have some Z-Wave IR blasters for the climate controls, right? Like for the split systems, and they would just literally put them into heat, put into cool, and just send the IR blasters out there. I tried the Sensibo, but I think the cloud dependency was too annoying, right? Like we just added that latency.
Right.
Um, so
Yeah.
yeah, I'm surprised you haven't done things like when Plex turns on and starts playing, the lights dim down in the theater and then the lights dim up. Like that would be like my first thing to do in that room.
Yeah.
So one of the things, so where I'm sitting right now, we have like a bar height countertop. So it's like a bar that we tend to sit and eat at. So sometimes we'll get like takeout or pizza or whatever. We'll come in here, we'll
Nice.
set the lights to 1% in the back and turn them off in the front, and we'll sit here and
Yep.
eat. And then as we're ready, we'll just move down to the front and turn off the lights. So it's really hard to predict exactly what we're going to want to do because it depends
Mm.
on our situation. And I haven't figured out how to say if we went to, if we stopped by one of the pizza places and brought it home, like, yeah, okay,
Yeah.
trigger it, and now it does this thing. But if not, then trigger this other thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the use
Couldn't you?
cases are complex.
I was gonna say you could probably use multi-zone kind of presence, right? To say, okay, I'm in this area, or somebody is in this area. So based on that, do keep it at 1% and zero for the rest of it, or whatever, right? And
Yeah, that
Yeah.
that works until, and maybe I could just do it with the date of the occurrence as well. I tend to host fancy football drafts in the theater, so
Oh,
we want
nice.
all
nice.
the lights to be on but dim in the whole area.
Yep.
Then, so it's like all
Fair,
these
fair,
different
fair.
situations. We have different use
Yeah.
cases, and then also the kids, if they come in to play like PS5 or something on the theater screen, they tend to want the lights on because they're kids and they get scared of the dark, you know?
Sure.
Yep.
Or they'll
Sure.
trip down the steps if there's friends over or something. So yeah, it's just so complex is has been the problem. And like I said, I probably need to just bite the bullet and look at all the, zones with the presence sensors and come up with the main, objective. The other thing I've done in the past is if certain I'll use like a boolean like a shoot, what's it called? A helper, a Boolean
Yeah.
helper.
Input helper.
And then
Yep.
it's like,
Yeah.
if this is on, then just ignore all these things. So we actually have that for some of the areas where we have motion lights and everything. Because what I tend to do with motion lights is when you walk in the area, that area and the next hallway light up. And as you walk through, lights up and then it'll turn it off behind you after so long. Well, some of the areas kids like to have like sleepovers. So it's like, well, we don't want that to light up in the middle of the night if somebody gets up. So I have it triggered where you've turned the boolean on, it won't do it, and then after 10 hours being on the boolean, it'll turn itself back off. So it's always monitoring that. So I think that that's maybe a workaround that I could have, or I could have, in this instance, it's you know fantasy football draft, and in this instance, it's this other thing. And then if it's in that category, because I do that a lot for our time of use. So I have a different helper that I have labeled. This is our peak time, or our off peak time, or our super off peak time, and then look at that particular helper and say, okay, is it if it's this, do that thing, but if it's the other thing, don't. So I think that's probably the route I need to go. I just need to figure out what are the different instances we have. So, eating dinner before the movie. We have the fantasy football draft. We have just coming in for a movie, or we have like kids playing video games and they just want it on because they're afraid, whatever it is.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Have you utilized scenes like like I'm thinking like even you've got your fantasy football night, you could have like a scene for that, right? That does the lights to the right level. Eating pizza, you have a pizza scene. Have you using those at all?
I've avoided scenes for the most part after Samsung burnt me with scenes.
Okay.
So I'm maybe a little bitter on scenes. So I tend to do just straight automations for the most part. I have a couple scenes, but not too many. But maybe this is a good use case for the scenes where I could actually utilize those in this one off and have the right thing happen. With our fantasy football, I used to like to utilize our Google Home and have different reactions from that. So I had different prompts there where I could say, this team drafted this player, and it would respond back like, why the heck would this team draft that player? That player is garbage. Like, so I had different prompts and stuff I'd set up, and had some like scenes associated with some of that, where it would, react to like, oh, you drafted them. Like, what are you doing? And, different light sequences, that type of thing, to try to throw it off sort of like, emergency situation.
Yeah, yeah.
So, moving off from the theater. I know you mentioned time of use and so on. So, are you doing anything from like optimizing power usage and things like that?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. We have everything automated as much as possible. The one thing that I've also embraced is not buying smart home devices for the sake of buying smart home devices, because I am addicted sometimes to things like that, where it's like,
Yeah,
Interesting.
man, having the new washer or dryer, or dishwasher, that'd be pretty cool. But ours have that delay a couple hours on it, so I have a piece of paper posted like, here are the cheapest times. So if anybody needs to reference it, you can delay the smart or the washer or dishwasher without being smart. But the other things, like we have dehumidifiers in our basement. I have those automated, so they only run during the cheapest time and then turn off during the more expensive time. Incorporated with that as well, we have Tesla solar and power walls. I actually keep a monitor of the grid as well. So our power walls will tell us if the grid goes down. So if the grid goes down, I utilize a lot of the same automations to take the place of the peak pricing. So we don't need dehumidifiers if the grid goes down. The fish lights on the fish tanks, they all go, all these things go off
Yeah.
that are not essential, so that we make sure
yeah,
we have power for lights and refrigerators and things that we really care about. Our pool pump doesn't turn on, things like that. Also, our pool pump is another one that's a big energy suck. So what we do with that is we have that automated, where we have a helper that's a counter, and I just use 15-minute increments to figure out how much it ran throughout the day. So every 15 minutes, Home Assistant checks it. Is it running right now? If so, increment it one. Because sometimes, like, we'll go out and get in the pool and we'll turn on the filter while we're in the pool. And when we get out, we'll turn it off. So it figures out how many times it ran. And then when we get to the cheapest time, it figures out, did it run enough today? If not, kick it on. And then every 15 minutes, check to see if it ran enough. And as soon as it did, turn it off, so we don't run it more than we have to, because it does use up a lot of electricity. But we always use it over the cheapest period if possible, unless somebody's in and they manually turn it on, that type of thing.
That's actually pretty smart because then you know, like, okay, we've already used it, X amount of hours today. We don't need it to run for the full period of the cheap window today.
Yeah, a-
And
and it's really important actually for ours as well, because we have a saltwater pool. So it's using the chlorination from the salt water. So if you run it too
Right.
much, you're going to actually over chlorinate your pool as well. So it's not like you're just wasting electricity. You're actually over chlorinating, which is not good.
Yeah. That's interesting. I never thought of it that way too, right? And I think yeah. And it's cool to take those big items to say, okay, based on this, let's build automations around it. Are you I know you said you have a power wall, so with that you get a certain level of monitoring in there. Are you also doing any like smart breakers or anything like that, or are you monitoring power, the energy consumption between each device, and how granular?
We don't have any smart breakers. I have looked at those and considered those. I think maybe we'll get there at some point. For the most part, I've used just the individual plugs with the energy monitoring on those. If I do want to,
Right.
look granular at what level are we using. Also, I can to an extent figure it out based on our electricity bill. Before we put on solar or power walls, what I figured out was our electricity company provides us hourly information on our usage. So we can go back for 5 years and look hourly at how much we used. And you can do all kinds of analysis from that
Oh,
and
that's neat.
make some inferences from that, basically.
That's
Because
Have
really
you thought
cool.
about chucking that data into like an AI and seeing what it could tell you?
yeah, that's I'm a bit of a spreadsheet nerd, so
Yep.
I put it in there and played around with it. But yeah, I think that is a
Yeah.
good AI use case to, what can you tell from this? And that was
Yeah.
before we had solar and power walls. Now that we have that, we're sending energy back to the grid as well. So there's even more data points now because we have
Yep.
double basically.
Yeah. Do you have you done the ROI on something like the power walls, or any other kind of EcoFlow or whatever else? Like how does that work out for you in terms of like how long would you need to recover how much ever you've spent on it? Because they're not cheap.
No, no, they're not cheap at all. We did do all of the ROI on everything and figure out exactly what the payback period was. The one thing I would say though is we have a value of having electricity all the time that also we took into consideration um, because obviously you do have the actual payback, but then there's other computations you can make as well. So I just pulled it up, and we what we installed was about, I think it was about 24 kilowatt hours of solar panels on our house, which is 57, I think, solar panels we ended up with on the house, and we put 4 power walls, and 4 power walls is a lot of power walls. And every time you
Yeah.
add a power wall, every time you add a power wall, your payback period goes further out. So we
Yeah.
we looked at all the different options. Um, so the solar with Powerwall payback was 13 years, and that assumed that we wouldn't energy arbitrage at all. If we do the maximum energy arbitrage, it's about 10 years of payback. And that means that every day during the daytime, we send all of our power back to the grid during that peak pricing. And then as soon as we hit the super off peak, we'd power those back up. So we basically discharge and recharge those power walls every day. We don't do it
Right.
quite to that extreme. We usually will do 20%. And then it also utilizes the weather forecast to determine if we need to override that, or if I know of a certain situation going on locally, I'll just override it and say, keep all the power walls, because we don't want to lose electricity.
And this is all powered through Home Assistant?
Yeah, yeah, all the Powerwall stuff connects directly into Home Assistant. I also have we have a Tesla Model Y that I have
Yeah.
integrated into Home Assistant as well. That one's obviously cloud based, but the Powerwalls are a local integration.
What API are you using for the Model Y? Are you using a native one, or are you using like a third party one?
You're asking really hard questions that I don't remember the answer to right now. Um,
That's all good. That's like again, I'm just wondering. I've got one too, right? And I used to have it in here, and then after Tesla kind of changed up how they do the API, I
yeah,
know
well,
for a
that's what I
while
was
there
gonna
was like,
say.
which we're gonna charge
Yeah,
it and charge you for it, and
well,
kind of not really in the
I got
tier.
some type of notice, but I've never been charged. It's the
Yeah.
Tesla custom integration. That's the
Okay.
one I have.
Interesting. All right.
I
I'll
think
have to
that's
check it out.
through. I think it's through Hacks, if I
Yeah.
remember
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I I've heard so I made a video about that, I don't know, a year or so ago, and then I did get, some feedback on the video that, "Hey, this isn't working for me now." And,
Mm.
you know,
Yeah.
I think that you may run into that situation, so maybe it's not, feasible at the current time to utilize that integration, but mine still works and doesn't have any issues. Every once in a while, I have to, like, restart it, but other than that, the main thing I use that one for is knowing who's coming home. So we have 3 separate garage doors, and we use the geofencing and Home Assistant to determine who comes home and which garage door to open. So if I come home or my wife comes home, sometimes we'll switch cars. So we need to know whose garage door to open. So I actually have it checked to see if the Tesla's in drive. And if it's in drive, I make the assumption that that's the door you need to open because it's coming somewhere. It's going somewhere. So that's usually the methodology that I'll utilize to figure out which garage door to open. But I also the other thing that I that I started doing, I guess I don't know 5 6 months ago, is I started to monitor when did I arrive at work. And then what I would do is start a counter basically, and then 8 hours and 15 minutes later, I would tell it to check to see if the Tesla is still sitting at work. If so, turn on precondition it so it's ready to go. It's
Yep.
warm or cold or whatever.
Heat it up, whatever. Yeah.
Yep. Yes, that's the other one that I tend to use it for. And also, I do it at my wife's work. So at a certain time every day, if it's sitting at her work, it also will precondition because hers is a more consistent time where she comes in and leaves.
Yeah, so how do you handle like, like you're stuck in a meeting late there and maybe your car's sitting there for an hour, conditioning itself, wasting energy. Like, how does it know when to start that process?
Yeah, it will automatically after a while. I try not to have those hour-long meetings. And so I try to and that's one of the benefits I have of starting and stopping at different times, is I look at my schedule ahead of time, and I try to model my schedule around the time that I'm going to actually show up and leave. If that's not the case, I can certainly, pop up in the app or on my phone that, "Hey, it started preconditioning," or finish preconditioning because it doesn't take long usually. And I can just stop it there if I need to. But sometimes I'll also have coworkers that'll just come by and say, "Your car is out there making some funny noise." Yeah, it's getting ready for me. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, don't worry about it. Yeah. I guess you
No,
could
no
also
worries.
like have Home Assistant look at your calendar too, right? Like you've got a
Yeah,
late meeting scheduled, don't wait until the end of that, right?
right. Yeah, yeah. That would be another good way to utilize it. The only probably issue with that is I can't interact with any of my work calendars. With Home
Uh,
Assistant or anything like that,
yeah.
because it's
Same.
a yeah, it's a privacy issue.
All locked out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get you.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. It sucks. It's
Yeah.
honestly, even just for planning stuff for like family between me and my wife and whatever. And it's like, it's that itself is a huge pain, but not being able to to share, even just
Yeah.
availability, right? And it's
Oh, 100%.
that yeah, that sucks. That's cool. Now, I mean, from a tablets and all those kind of things, how do you drive a lot of this stuff? Is it mostly just again? I know you mentioned a lot of your automations are pretty transparent. So, do you use voice to augment anything? Do you use tablets or wall panels or anything like
Yeah.
that?
We have an old iPad that had a crack in the screen, that
Yeah.
is mounted on the kitchen wall, and
Yep.
we do have Home Assistant on that. Um, my wife asked me to put that there, and I would say it's underused, barely used, probably.
Yeah. Yep.
She's like, "I want to be able to see this stuff." Okay, so I made a dashboard, which I will say is probably not the best dashboard. I probably need to revisit it, but with the lack of use, it doesn't give me any real reason to go do it. So I will say we have that. It's available. You can do things like arm the alarm, disarm the alarm, turn everything on, open garage doors, close it, all that kind of. It's all there if you wanted to do it, but nobody hardly ever does it. We do utilize the Google voice assistants a lot with creating content. I have Google and the Amazon Assistant, as well as some of the Apple 4Ks, and we have Apple iPhones, iPads, that type of thing. So we have all three of the major assistants. We utilize Google the most by far, and a couple reasons that we do that is we bought them when they were on sale for like $19 each for the small ones. We have a couple of we have a couple of the hubs, and everybody's familiar with that. And my opinion is that Google works the best when we're asking it really, really random stuff. So it's the most it's the most intuitive for my 8-year old to just say, hey, gee, what does this mean, or how does this work, or how do I get this thing on my video game, or whatever it is, like that's the one most likely to give the correct answer, or it might even pull up a YouTube video or whatever else. So we have those throughout the house. We do utilize those for certain things. We have a good night routine, so it'll kick in. We sell a good night, and it'll turn off the lights in the master bedroom and turn on the fan and lock certain doors and that type of thing, and different alarm setups that we have. So we do utilize those a lot, especially for turning on and off the more unpredictable things, because that's the bedroom's one of them that I've struggled with. Is
Hmm.
what do I want to do exactly? I think I'm gonna try one of those pads for underneath the mattress to see if it's
Oh yeah.
occupied or not.
Yep.
Yep.
um, so that's one of the things, because I will say a blind spot for me in the past has been ESP Home. Really looking into making some more headway there. So I think that's an area that I want to grow in the future. Um, I've been reluctant because again, I feel like that's maybe a little more techy than what I want
I
to
was going
be
to
in
say,
some
like you
instances.
at the top of the hour, you said, "Hey, I
Yeah,
don't want to. I'm an Apple guy now. I don't do this custom ROMs."
right.
And now you're like, "Cool, well, maybe I want to go down ESP Home and get out the
Yeah,
soldering iron and all that."
yeah, yeah. I'm a little bit addicted sometimes to things that I make bad choices.
Yeah.
ESP Home's great, man. It is absolutely start playing with it, and you get again, even just small things, right? Like, and then just grow from there.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, but we definitely utilize the voice assistants more than what we do the dashboards or anything. We have our iPhones. We all have Home Assistant on them, including my kids. They have Home Assistant on their devices. Just if even if they don't want to use it, just for tracking of who's home, who's not, that type
Yeah,
of
yeah,
thing,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
works out really well. I do know in the past I've seen a lot of people complain about iPhones and the reliability of the
Mm.
geofencing, but I'll say
Mm.
since I came over, I haven't ever had an issue. Speaking of making bad decisions about what the heck I'm using, started out with Life 360 because Samsung I
Oh
could
Oh,
never
yeah,
get to work right,
yeah,
and then
yeah.
and then as soon as I think it
yeah.
was right when I came over to Home Assistant, Life 360 was there, and immediately it just stopped working, and I was
And
like,
then just
of
yeah,
course.
yeah.
So that was one, because when I read all the issues that people had, and I was like, I don't know, I guess I'll try it because I didn't have another option at the time other than if I wanted to do own tracks or something like that, and I want a simple solution if I can, and it worked out great. So haven't had any problems. Also, we utilize the Google Homes for announcements as well. So when certain things happen in our house, we'll also broadcast. So like even though our washer is sort of smart, it's a little bit smart. It does have an app and there is like a hacks integration, but it doesn't work reliably. It's to the point where I have to have it check to see if it's connected every hour and try to refresh it because it just doesn't stay connected. I think they try to block it is what happens. um, but I have a smart plug on there as well, so I can monitor the energy usage and I can figure out when it's actually finished. And then throughout our house, we have an announcement. The washer's done, and then if the dryer actually is connected, it'll tell us the dryer entered cool down and the dryer's done when it does that as well. So that's pretty neat. Also, we have the rear link doorbell. So when anybody hits the doorbell, Home Assistant actually pushes the doorbell feed out to our Google Home hubs, so you can see immediately who's at the doorbell using the cast that it uses. And then we flash, like in the basement, we flash some lights because we have like a bar area in the basement too. So if we're sitting down there watching, a game or something, it flashes the lights a couple times.
Yeah.
And usually people were like, "What is going on? Like, is there your electric going out?" I'm like, "No, somebody's at the door. It's good."
Just
Yeah.
just Bob at the door. It's
Yeah,
fine. No big.
Yeah.
right. Yeah. Yeah, so I think lots of fun there and things that work really well. Everybody seems to be really happy with it at our house, because that's one thing. Our washer and dryer don't have like a loud beep or anything, so unless you're
Mm.
right there, you don't even notice it. So having those announced throughout the house has really helped, push the laundry to completion.
Yeah,
Yeah,
'cause the last thing you want is like the clothes just sitting in the laundry and then forgetting it like hours later, like, oh, now I gotta
Yeah,
rewash it all again. Yeah.
yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Well, if you're looking to upgrade your smart home, you can't go past Zeus. Zeus have just released their brand new Z-Wave long-range siren and chime, the ZSE 50 800LR, which you might remember Agnes teasing when she was here a few months ago. You can trigger audio and visual LED alarms based on smart sensors or other conditions, and the audio speaker plays your own files for personalized automation, or there's a selection in a preloaded library. Zeus are an official Works with Home Assistant partner, helping Nabukasa by providing long range devices for testing the new Home Assistant Connect ZWA2 radio. Zeus offer a range of affordable and innovative devices, including water leak sensors, water valve controllers, smart plugs, and scene controllers. Their new Zen 78 high power relay allows you to control and monitor higher load appliances up to 40 amps, which is perfect for pool pumps, air compressors, and other high power outlets. For the best prices on all Zeus products, head over to thesmartesthouse.com. That's thesmartesthouse.com.
All right. Josh, you mentioned you've got a lot of different automations. You said you got a couple hundred, I think, or like 100 or something like that.
Yeah.
That's a significant amount, right?
Yeah.
Whatever that is.
Yeah.
All on Home Assistant Green.
Uh, all in Home
Yeah.
Assistant Green, which is pretty impressive for that little box. Um, how like so how do you quantify like how much time you're saved? Like what is all of this actually netted you?
Yeah. Yeah, so I just pulled it up. I have 187 automations in Home Assistant Green
Wow,
that are
wicked.
Nice.
running. There's probably a couple that are disabled right now, but for the most part, they're running pretty frequently. And some of it's more straightforward. You leave the house and something happens when everybody's gone, that type of thing. But I've utilized some of these to really save us a lot of time. And I recently did calculations on how much time we're really saving, and it really blew me away with the amount of time because I just never thought that our smart home would save us, the level that it has. And some of them are probably a little more straightforward. Like you have the robot vacuum and mop. We have Narwhal, which has not ever integrated for me with Home Assistant. And I'm looking at other options to try to address some of that because that's one thing I really would like to see that it would integrate with Home Assistant. But just the fact that it vacuums and mops, I've realized that that saves us a significant amount of time. We have about 2,800 square feet per level of our house, and then we have two levels that are pretty much all finished. So I estimate, and we have a German Shepherd Golden Retriever dog, mix. So he sheds a lot. So we need to run the vacuum all the time. So I figure that we use it 3 times a week approximately. Twice upstairs and then once in the basement, and it would take us a couple hours until we would actually do the vacuuming and mopping every time during those periods. And I will say upstairs we actually vacuum and mop with the Narwhal every day. Every day we'll set it and it'll run, and it always has dog hair and everything else. But it does a good job. So just if we ran it 3 times a week, I was saying that we'd save about 300 hours a year just on that one particular automated home product.
Wow.
And that one isn't in Home Assistant, but we have several others that are. The other big one where we save a lot of time is in Home Assistant, and that's automating the smart plugs and smart switches. A lot of
Right.
these I have them integrated within Home Assistant via Zigbee, motion sensors or presence sensors. So what I'll have it do is basically a triangulation of where are people actually at, and then if you're in an area, that area lights up plus an adjacent area, particularly in the basement area where we have the soda machine. If you walk into that area, we have a pool table there, and then it'll light up like the bar area. It'll light up a hallway and everything adjacent. Um, the one that actually pushed me to do this originally was we have a stairway there, and there's a door at the top of the stairway. And what I found myself doing consistently was going up and down the stairs in the dark. And it's in the basement, so there's no natural light or anything. And I realized that my kids were doing it as well. I'm like, one of us is going to fall down these darn steps for no reason at all. So I was like, how do
Absolutely.
I, yeah, what do I need to do here? So what I did was install Lutron cassette switches, and then I think it might even be it's either a Aqara or some old Iris, motion and open close sensor. So that door, if it's open or the motion was detected, if either of those have occurred in I don't know the last 5 or 10 minutes, whatever it is, it keeps those lights on. Because I would find
Right.
myself trying to carry something up the stairs, so my hands would be full, and I'm like, I can't turn off the light at the top of the steps, and I'm not coming back.
Yeah.
So I walk up in the dark, which is stupid. So now
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
you open the door or you walk in that area, it automatically lights up. It handles it. It turns it back off when you need it to. And I realized that when I look across all of the automations that I have that do this for either smart switches, basements, hallways, that type of thing. Our master bathroom, we have smart switches in there that are motion sensor, including in the master shower. We have like a walk-in shower, and we have a light and a fan in that area, and we have a motion sensor that also detects humidity. So it monitors humidity, and as long as the humidity is above a certain level or it had motion within a certain amount of time, it stays on. And then once it gets outside of those requirements, it actually turns itself off. Because in the past we would just turn off the fan when we left the room, but the humidity could still be high. So it just monitors it. We don't have to touch it, and it knows what to
Yeah.
do. We also have the fish lights that we turn on and off, and the dehumidifiers that we turn on and off at different times. And I realized over the course of a week, we had over 3,500 instances of on or off from one of these automations that we have set up in Home Assistant. So what I did was I actually dug into the data and I said, for these devices, give me on or off that occurred. And these devices we only have automated because we don't actually like go into those areas otherwise. Or if we do,
Yeah.
we don't need to ever turn them on or off because it is just automated. And some of the things like dehumidifiers, it's a smart plug behind it. Nobody's ever touching that thing. So
Yeah.
it does its own thing. So I was just blown away by the fact that we had 3,500 of these instances a week once we pulled down the data. And I was just estimating that we have, 5 seconds a time because some of the switches, maybe you're walking by and you can hit them. But in other instances, you might have to walk across the room to hit it. Or I told you
Yeah.
initially, our electrician maybe wasn't always bought into smart home ideas and that type of thing. I told him what I wanted for our switches when we built our house, but he didn't exactly do that. So in our kitchen area, we have some like ceiling lights, and to turn all those on or off, you have to go to 4 different locations in our kitchen. So we have a lot of instances where the wiring just doesn't make a lot of sense, even though the house isn't that old. Just maybe didn't follow directions. So in that instance, you're not hitting more than one at a time. You're going across the room, and those actually aren't even automated with these automations. So those aren't even counting, but that's another example of where you're going outside of your normal walkway to even get to those. So with 5 seconds an instance and 3,500 times a week, that came out to almost 250 hours a year that I've been saving with my smart home from smart switches and smart plugs, which I couldn't believe once I ran all the numbers. Like it's
Wow.
insane to me.
How okay, so this is interesting. So I want to know how are you then getting that data out of Home Assistant? Like, are you using the recorder entity with like a 7-day retention period? Like, are you offsetting like a whole bunch of your data to like MySQL database somewhere else? Like, how are you leveraging all of this data?
Yeah, yeah. So I was curious. So I actually just went into the Home Assistant UI and pulled the data myself from the is it activity or history? I forget which one it is. I think
Yeah.
it's activity that I went into and actually, create a CSV basically of
Yep.
the data, and then ran it through a spreadsheet, and then did data checks on it for validation purposes because garbage data is not ever useful. So,
Yeah, of
does
course.
this all make sense?
Yeah.
Spot check it, look at what it's actually saying, look at the dates and the times. Do these things make sense? And yeah, I was, there were a couple things that I looked at and figured out that maybe that this wasn't the way I wanted to calculate it. So that's why I did go down to just looking at the smart switches and smart plugs because I actually included some other things like blinds in this. And then
Yeah.
when I did the data checks, what I get from the blinds in the log there is I get opening, 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 and it's,
Of
it's like,
course.
well, this isn't really useful because these were like
Yeah.
10 instances in 2 seconds or something ridiculous. So I
Yeah.
actually pulled all those out. So I did do data validation on everything and pulled all those out and did more simple math on some of those that I couldn't validate accurately, I would say, in Home Assistant. So for example, the smart blinds, we have 9 smart blinds throughout our house, and I figure my wife is a little bit obsessive about opening and closing the blinds sometimes. So I figured that we open and close them an average of twice a day, like the cycle. So it'd be 4 times a day of open or close. And then over the course of 7 days times the 9 instances that we have, that'd be 252 times that there's a blind opened or closed. So instead of walking around to each of the blinds and doing that, that was a situation where it's all automated there, to whatever our standards are. So, for example, if we leave the house, we have certain blinds that automatically close so that the sun's not beating in and heating up our living room over the summer, or
Yeah.
letting in drafts or whatever that may be, because they're insulated blinds as well. So having those be automated is really cool. We have I was estimating about 10 seconds per blind, because I don't know if you guys have the string blinds, which is what we had. They get stuck all the
Yeah.
Yeah.
time, and 10 seconds is probably not near what it actually took me to get them all to go down and go to the next one. But just
Yeah.
10 seconds a time, that's another 35 hours a year just from our smart blinds, which I was like, it doesn't ever sound like much, but once you add it up over the course of the year, I did that across all the different smart home devices that we utilize. So not only the automations, but things like we have the Yarbo robotic lawnmower and snowblower. So that one was another one where once I went through what does that actually take, mowing example, we have about 4 acres of property. So I said it takes us about 3 hours to mow a week, and we mow once a week. So that's about half a year we need to mow here. So it's about 78 hours a year of mowing that we don't do. And the Yarbo goes out and does, and it does it in the rain. It does it overnight. It has rain sensor and we could stop it from doing that. But I found it to cut really well, even if it's raining or overnight. So I just let it go out
Nice.
and do its thing. It it can mow, every 2 days or so. It can mow our whole property. So we can have it mow about 3 times a week. And we would never do that. But then you're cutting off, the smaller amounts versus I would tend to cut I cut off
Yeah.
this
Yeah. Yeah.
much and then
Yeah.
the grass dies. So it's a much better situation all the way around. Also, looking at the snow blowing, I estimated we have about 4 events a year because we're in Pennsylvania in the
Huh.
States. So we don't have tons of snow here, but we have, some. And I said at each event we had, about 5 hours, 5 times where we'd go out and and shovel or take care of it with a snowblower or whatever. So it doing that is another 20 hours a year. And I know when we had met face to face, I had to actually run the Yarbo for when I was remote, and I ran it to my house in the morning and monitored it on my Reolink cameras. And we were good to go because everything worked just fine. My wife was very happy. Again, the WAF is super important, the wife acceptance factor. So she
Yeah.
had her cup of hot tea, looking out the door and seeing it do it, and she was inside and warm, and I didn't have to be there. It was great.
Oh, that is a dream. It is. Phil knows because I've ranted about this enough times about how much I hate
Mm.
shoveling the snow. It's like if it's a little bit of snow, whatever, sure, whatever. But when it's like almost knee high, and I'm just like, nah, I do not want to do that, right? And I don't have a massive driveway or anything. It's two cars, and then at the bottom part, which is probably one across, and it's like I just yeah, it's something I'd really rather not do.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
I had done a test. We had a snow event. A lot of times our snow will come during the day, but we had one that came overnight. And I was like, okay, what am I going to do about this? So what I did was I stuck the plow on the front because you can do the snow plow or the snow blower. And based on the type of snow they were predicting, I'm like, the snow plow will do pretty good with this. So what I did was I set it up to run overnight. So from like, I don't know, whenever we went to bed, maybe it was 11 and got up at 7 or something like that, it had run like 6 times overnight and cleared our driveway. We got up and there's nothing on the driveway, and everybody else has snow everywhere. But because it keeps up on it the whole time, so it would just keep on going out and running. So when you're talking about these really big events, the Yarbo is really cool because it can run continuously throughout. So it's never hitting those, really high amounts. It's hitting a couple inches at a time, clearing that off and keep up on it.
yeah, which is perfect. That's all I needed to do, right? And it's even if it's like, I don't know, 6 inches, whatever, great. Go do that and then come back home. I know there's just I saw on Facebook, there's another, I guess a kind of a competitor to Yarbo now. The first one I've seen, maybe there's a couple more out there, but it's the first one I've seen. But they were like, I asked some questions to them, stuff like that, but like, hey, what's your plans to open up an API and things like that. I never really got any direct answers. Maybe I asked the wrong questions. I'm not sure. Again, it could be entirely me and how I wrote it or whatever. But because I would love to see because the Yarbo today doesn't integrate. But when Phil and I spoke to the president, CEO, whatever, at CES. He's like, I love the home assistant community. He's like, I want to be able to get to the point where I can just open up the APIs and people can. He's like, I just want to sell my machines, right? And it's like, and I don't really care how you use it. Use the app, don't use the app, whatever. It's like, I don't monetize the app, right? And it's so there's it's interesting. There's a few people we've talked to like that, right? That have that philosophy that we are all about, right? And hopefully that comes. But this other company, they kind of were just like, hey, yeah, like we might do something, and it's like, okay, well, what is your roadmap? Like, does that? And there's like, and kind of nothing, right? And kind of give up on it, but
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
I think Yarbo, it's definitely I get on the forums there and everything. Definitely, it's been mentioned a lot there, and I've beat that drum. Hey, Home Assistant is what we want, because some people are like, well, what about this integration or that integration, or connecting it to Google, Amazon, Apple, whatever. And it's like, no, Home Assistant is the answer for something like this because this is a community of tinkerers with the Yarbo. A lot of people, see the Arbo and they're like, "This is a brand new product. How does it work?" But really, this is, I want to say, it's the fourth, version basically of this thing, because originally, my recollection is it was a snowbot, so it was like a just a snowblower type thing, and then they had Core a couple years ago, and then they came out with the new Core last year that they, said they were going to support for a few years with all the new modules. That's the one that I have. So really, it's not the first iteration, but we've had a lot of
right,
reactions. I made a video once of that I pulled one of our reel and camera feeds from, because we had we're in a bit of a rural areas, so we had this guy driving down the road in a truck, and you see him like fly by the house, and then you see him back up in front of the house because this thing's out there blowing snow,
what's
and
going on? Yeah,
and I picked up his audio, and he's like talking to somebody on his cell phone saying it's like this robot snowblower, snowplow. I'm not sure what it is, but it's clearing their drive, one of those. So it's funny.
I don't know what it is, but I want
Yeah,
one. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
yeah,
He
Yeah.
said that thing's awesome. One of those.
yeah.
Yeah. So yeah,
Well,
that's
it's
definitely one that turns heads.
yeah, and I mean, it is to me that is one of those machines that's actually very useful, right? It's I don't know, the price point's still very high for me. Like I really do hope that it becomes more mainstream, like these kind of devices become more mainstream, and I don't want a point product. I would love a single product that does everything. And in all honesty, that would kind of lock me into their ecosystem too, right? It's like, listen, if I have the snowblower module and I have a lawn mowing module and the edging module, whatever, even if my core thing, like the actual core robot dies, I'll probably buy another one because I have all this other investments around it, right? And it's that is not encouragement to make crappy hardware, please. But if anybody's listening, but on the other side of it, it's also like, you know, I don't want to have 4 or 5 different machines that do, I don't want to say the same tasks, not or even similar, but like lawn maintenance, right, or yard maintenance, let's call it. Uh, that can be a machine, and I think Yarbo did that pretty well. But and this other company, yet to see what it looks like, but it hopefully that becomes a little more mainstream.
Yeah, I've looked at a lot of them over the years. The reason that I went with Yarbo, initially, and considered it seriously is because we have almost 4 acres. And most of the time, if you look at a robot mower, they're maxing out at maybe an acre, give or take.
And
So,
they're really
Yeah,
small, like they've got
mhm,
no battery capacity, right? Like the
yep.
Arbo has some size to it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that thing,
yeah, we
that thing
tried
is
tried lifting
solid.
that thing. That's heavy.
Yeah,
And
it is very heavy.
I asked him, I was like, "Listen, like, this is a pretty nice piece of machine. Are you worried about people stealing?" It's like, "Oh, yeah, we've got theft detection, blah, blah, blah." And he's like, "But also try lifting it." And I was like, and I did. And he was like, "With your knees," 'cause it is not light.
No, it's not
Uh,
light, and it's very awkward. It has, special screws to secure the battery area as well, because the battery's, a decent size, so it has some weight as well. My one neighbor has, like, 14 acres, and it's a lot of fields and that type of thing, but we have a neighbor that lives on the other side of them that that sometimes will walk over to our house. So this neighbor said something to me. He's like, "Hey, I always mow this path in between your houses. Do you want to just use your robot and you can send it over to my yard and just mow this path? A couple, 5 feet wide or whatever it
Yeah.
is." I'm like, "Yeah, sure." So I went to map it and I pulled it out over there, and that was the first time I accidentally tested our geofencing because it went beyond my area, and the alarm starts, whatever is triggered in my phone and everything. I'm like, oh, it works. That's good, because it's like
Yeah.
beeping and making the siren or whatever it did, that type of thing. So like that works. And it also has, cellular. So if somebody does take it off the property, you can track it and everything. And I believe even if they remove the battery, there's some type of like battery backup on that particular aspect,
Oh,
so you can track
interesting.
it for a longer period of time. So I think that's, yeah. And furthermore, they'd have to do it for parts because
Yeah.
the way everything's set up, the serial number
Yeah.
is actually secured to your account, so they wouldn't be able to activate it on anything else. So it would be a whole lot of work for them to do anything with it and make any money off of it.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. It's I don't know. It is that is on the top of my list of stuff that, I would like or I want. Just some kind of thing to do all the stuff for me. I know, Phil, we talked about doing uh getting lawnmowers too, right? Like robotic lawnmowers, those kind of things. But I would just love to have one that's just does it all.
Yeah, this thing definitely has done a lot for me. I don't have the leaf blower. I did purchase the edger. I just got an email like 2 days ago saying that that's shipped and it's on, a cargo transport to
Nice.
the
Just in time
states.
for
Nice.
winter.
That's the trimmer for, yeah. I actually
Yeah.
opted to not get it till the spring. So if I get it before that,
Yeah.
because they gave us an option at one point because it did get delayed. Because the one thing, you said don't put up crappy hardware. That is the one thing I will say about Yarbo. They seem to be adverse to doing that whenever possible because there was a spreader. There were two different spreaders actually. Both of them got canceled because in some initial testing they weren't found to be good enough, as well as there was, I believe it was a vertical edger, also canceled because in initial testing it proved to not be a feasible solution that worked well enough. And then the trimmer, the reason it was delayed was they actually modified it and changed several things about it. So initially it was supposed to be a front mounted trimmer on the lawnmower. They moved it to a rear mounted, added extra support there, and then even after they did that and sent it out to, they have a PPP. It's, I forget what it pioneers. It's something pioneers that they utilize. It's certain people in the environment that, in their ecosystem that test everything for them. Once they got it out to them, they still found there were a couple things that weren't quite right. So they went back and redesigned it again. And that's why there was the delay because they don't want to release that crappy product. So I will say I did speak with, the same gentleman you did, and I've had really, positive interactions. I've emailed and talked to him different times, and definitely seems to that they want to put out a quality product, which makes me feel good because I'm going to be totally honest. When I initially looked at the Yarbo, they had a special coupon, like, sign up thing that you could do, and I did that in maybe May of 2024. A
Right.
month later, I canceled it, and I was like, I don't know if I trust this. I'm not sure if it's ready enough for mainstream.
Yeah.
And then I
Yeah.
hung out until a couple people started getting them in October, November of last year. And once I started seeing the real results, real people, I was like, okay, I'm in. And then I bought it immediately, got it in December of last year, immediately started using it, in the snow. And then this year, I think we used the zero turn lawnmower once to mow our property this year, because we did have a couple problems here or there where we were working with support and the grass needed mowed. But every time we've had an issue, Yarbo has backed it up or, done a lot of times it's remote. They can remote in and fix certain things or look at the diagnostics and update something and it'll work just fine. It may firmware or whatever it is. So it's a really neat product. Definitely one that I'm happy that I have. Saved me
Yeah.
a lot of time in the cold and in the heat. In Pennsylvania,
Yeah.
we can get seasons in a day. Here's what we say. So we
Yeah.
have all the extremes. I did look at some other ones, and I did see some other ones right now that are coming out. It might be the same one, Rohan, that you had seen, that does like snow blowing and lawn mowing, but most of them don't do all that. So I want to
No.
keep my eye out on these new ones.
Yeah, it's a cool space, right? Like the multi thing. I think there's one called like the Apollo something. turf storm, Apollo turf storm, something like that. But yeah, again, I don't know. All of them are very pricey for what they are, right? So, but again, how much does it save you, right? And it's that's the part I'm trying to figure out is if it's worth that.
Yeah, and the what actually had me justify it and where how I got to a yes was I looked at what am I replacing with this? And that was my John Deere zero turn lawnmower. And those are pretty expensive to start with. And then our snowblower as well. So as soon as I priced those two things together, it's pretty close to the price of the Yarbo, and then I'm not doing the work. And I was like, okay, if I'm at the same price point and I'm not doing the work, that's definitely worth it. The other thing that that we've done with the Yarbo, outside of mowing and snow blowing and snow plowing, is we've utilized it for some of the towing tasks. So
Yeah,
in the states, we like to blow things up and have big Fourth of July and that type of thing. So I put my John Deere trailer on it, and it hauls around like all of our fireworks stuff that we do.
yeah.
Also, I hooked it up. We transplanted some trees that were probably too large to transplant, but we do whatever we're going to try, we're going to do it big, so I don't know, the one tree was probably about 25 feet, and we were transplanting it from my father-in-law's house. We brought it over to our house, and we were trying to hold it up and backfill the hole and everything. Well, I realized I could just hook it up to Yarbo with a tow strap, and it stood it right up, and it stood there and held it, and then we could backfill and everything, and there's no person having to hold this thing up.
Yeah,
um,
it's cool.
because we transplanted half dozen or a dozen of these trees, we had a big one that died. And once we did, I took this tow strap and hooked it up to Yarbo, and I yanked it out with Yarbo, and I drug it to the back of our property, and then chopped it up and put it on the wood pile. So Yarbo moved everything for me. So that was pretty
Hilarious.
neat.
That's awesome. That is
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, yeah, and it has like a patrol mode and some other things. It has a follow me mode, so you can just put on the like blank front, like the flat front, and put a trailer or something behind it if you're picking up sticks or something.
Yeah,
Those
yeah.
work pretty good. They maybe are a little bit slow. Like I need to walk slow, or else it loses me because it doesn't move
Yeah.
that fast. I think it's a safety thing, where it's like it doesn't want to go fast, and I tend to walk fast because time is of the essence here all the time. I have a
Well, with
saying.
4 acres, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, patience is the, virtue I don't have time for, is my saying, so
Nice.
I
I
don't
love
have
that.
any.
That's funny.
So
Yeah.
we've talked about your smart home, but I do want to talk about Josh's smart home.
Mhm.
How did you sort of get down the YouTube rabbit hole? What made you create a YouTube channel about smart home?
Yeah, yeah, so I've been watching smart home, YouTube videos for quite some time, probably the whole time I've been building out my smart home. So that includes, different times where I was looking up things on SmartThings or Home Assistant or just trying to get ideas. And there were a few different creators that have really piqued my interest over the years. And I had, four uh, in particular that really have driven me to be like, I think I have an interest in doing this, interest in sharing what I'm doing. Um, a, a little bit different style maybe than some of these folks. So that's what really pushed me to start that. I have an addiction to just trying to doing different things sometimes. I've never recorded anything really. I never did any video editing or anything, so it was all a huge challenge. And like usual, I failed miserably several times initially in a lot of things. But you live and learn, and you move on. So I had a few particular products or different type of videos that really seemed um, to pop for the viewers. So one of the things is the Govee permanent smart permanent outdoor lights. That's one of them that I put on my house, and it was like when you're putting those nickels in the slot machine, and it's the first time you ever do it, and you hit something like big, a big $100 off a nickel, something like that. It was like my fourth video, and like I got a whole bunch of views compared to what I probably should have gotten. And I go
Yeah.
back and look at it, and I'm like, this thing's garbage. Like,
Yeah,
what are we
yeah.
doing here?
Yeah.
So I had a lot of those instances, and I realized I need to utilize some of the unique aspects. So I have installed probably 4 or 5 different smart or permanent outdoor lights because different companies will contact me, and if I think they're reputable and that type of thing, I'll contact family members or friends or whatever. Hey, you want some smart lights? Like I need a video, but other than that, we'll put these things up. And so I've focused on smart lights and different automations. I want to lean more into automations. I've tried to avoid some of the products that I think are more questionable, the lower quality products. But I did do a couple videos about our home theater, not as much about too much smart home or that type of thing, but just the uniqueness here, where we have maybe some things that are not normally seen in a house. So that's that creativity and pushing the boundaries there has really probably elevated it maybe a little bit quicker, and making sure that I stick to the right niche too, I think is really important as I move forward. So, like I said, I just got the inspiration from a few other creators. There's Shane Watley and Reed from Smart Home Solver, and Brian from Automate Your Life, and Paul Hibbert. He's he's from the UK. He has certainly a different style than the rest of them. But yeah, those are the big ones that I've looked up to in the past, and I've met a few of them now at this point, at CES and that type of thing. So it's really cool, being in that group. Just I want to share with everybody else, what I've learned along the way on my smart home journey. Try to help them to achieve some of the same home automations and the same efficiencies and the same level of happiness and the wife acceptance factor that we have in my house, because that's definitely a huge one.
Yeah. What were you think? Like, what was your plans? Like, moving. Like, you've got some content that you're itching to get out. Like, what do you want to get out for like 2026? What's your goals?
Yeah. Yeah, I want to focus more on automation. It's been a while since I've done too many automation videos, like purely automation, where I go into the nuts and bolts of, I want to do this thing, and this is how we do it, and here's like the actual UI of Home Assistant. Because a lot of times that's what I was doing in the past. Is I would say, okay, here's what I'm trying to do, here's how it's done, and I'd actually pull up, the screenshots from my smartphone or iPad or whatever, and say, okay, this is what it actually looks like. Here are the triggers, the conditions, and how we're going to execute everything, and make sure that it flows properly, and it's never a hindrance to anything else. Because that's, like I said, that's always the conditions are key to me.
Oh yeah, like it, spend a whole lifetime trying to work out, all the conditions, right? Like,
Yeah.
what what are all the permutations that this automation could not fire incorrectly?
Exactly. And figuring that out ahead of time is really important. So I'm a pretty deep thinker on things. So like we designed our own house. We sat down with somebody we knew that drew CAD, and we designed the whole house, that type of thing. So I'm a pretty deep thinker on, like, I'm going to think about this nonstop, which is a blessing and a curse, because that means sometimes I just don't sleep. I'm just thinking about whatever it is on my mind, that type of thing. So, but I think it's really helpful with the automations is, well, what if, it's one of the things that's helped me along the way using, VBA and some other things, is what are all these conditions? What are, the triggers? What are the instances where we don't want it to happen, that type of thing, and just narrowing that down and then putting that into, true conditions within Home Assistant.
That's cool. So let me give you something to kind of finish off on here is if somebody was to build a brand new house, from scratch, whatever, yard, the whole house, basement, whatever the works, what are your top three kind of home automation tips for starting from scratch for that?
The top 3 tips would be: decide what you want to use for light switches, because I'm a big advocate of automating the light switches, not the light bulbs, because light bulbs burn out and the cost tends to add up on those. I know a lot of people like all the different colors and that type of thing, but I find that to be a short-term thing in a lot of instances. There's a certain place for that, but I think the light switches are much more important. So having those all decided up front and thought through and implemented is really useful. The cool thing with Lutron Cassetta is when I realized that there's certain areas that we needed a light switch and didn't have one, the little
Hmm.
remotes They have you can put the like the edge trim on them and put a 3M on the back of them and stick them to a wall. And if you place them properly, nobody knows it's not a switch. It looks exactly the same.
Yeah.
I actually have certain instances where we had maybe a 3 gang is what we call it, where there's 3 different switch spots. And I realized I wanted another one there, so I made it a 4 gang, and the remote sits in front of the wall, but then everything else actually does sit into the wall, but it's a 4 gang, cover on it, so it just looks nice and it looks like it was always there and works out really well. So I think definitely light switches. I'm big into having local executable items. So
Mhm.
I think at this point, if I was building fresh and didn't have anything, I would be seriously looking at Matter devices, particularly Thread over Matter. The thing that always makes me reluctant for those at this point is the price point. So if you have the budget for it, Thread over Matter would be number two. If you
Okay.
don't have the budget for it, then Zigbee's Z-Wave with a very strong mesh network is key. Is putting those outlets in strategically placed locations. Hopefully, you can
Yeah.
actually make them, function. I know some of us end up with outlets in a weird position because it's like we need mesh, support from here, but we don't actually
Yep.
have a need for a smart switch. So it gets a
Yeah.
little bit
Yeah.
weird. But so if you can plan those out, some of the things that I find those useful for, like I mentioned the dehumidifiers and the fish tanks for the fish lights, that type of thing, and the filters. But I also utilize those. We have some of those UV lights that attract the bugs with the sticky stuff. So I have a couple of like the bigger ones that are usually more in like restaurants that I got on Amazon. I don't know, maybe $30 or something. So they have like the big black
Right.
light in them. With the pool and everything, we get a lot of flies if people are walking into the house. So I have those automated because they don't do much during the day, but once it gets dark, the bugs are attracted to it. So I have those turned on and off.
That's good advice. How did you find the whole process of building your own house and, like, kinda understanding what you wanted and stuff like this? I not even specifically from a smart home kinda thing,
Yeah,
just in general.
yeah, yeah. So we tried to weigh out, the return on investment on things. And so
Yeah.
one of the positives that we had was my father-in-law was a foreman at a local builder. So between my father-in-law and my wife and I, we act as the general contractors for the whole build as well. So it was a lot of hands-on. I'm not handy at all. I can pick things up and put them down, and that's where that ends. So my father-in-law will tell me this is what needs done. If I can do it myself, I'll do it. If not, I'll carry things and he can help me do it. And we did that kind of thing. But what we did before we even got to that point, my wife is a much more visual person. So we decided we were going to build a house. I said, well, we need a floor plan. So we went out and just like looked on the web and, here are all the different floor plans. What are the things that we do or don't like? So let's look at these 10. Tell me what you do or don't like about these things. And we narrowed it down to this is the style of different things we want. This is the location of different things we want, that type of thing. And also, do we want ensuite bathrooms? If so, what is the price point to do it up front? And we found out those are really cheap. So, like, we made the kids' bedrooms like ensuite bathrooms because the upfront for us doing a lot of the stuff, it was not very expensive and then adds value to the house. So, we did a lot of that. And with my wife being very visual, the one thing I did, we lived in a townhouse at the time. So, for all the rooms, once we had the CAD drawn up, I said, okay, well, this dimension is, I don't know, 10 by 20. So I would go into a room that we have, and I'd lay down the tape measure and I'd say, okay, here's the start of that room, here's the end of that room, and then going the other way, it's this big. So immediately, like this is the actual size. So if this is a living room, how does the sofa fit in here, like physically?
Yeah,
And
yeah, 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 yeah.
and the other thing I did was we did a 2 scale printout from the CAD, and then I measured our furniture. I did little cutouts to scale of here's our bed, here's our kitchen table, here's our sofa. Let's play dollhouse kind of thing. And we actually put them out on the thing. How do they fit in here? Where would we put our furniture? Does this make sense? Does something need adjusted? That type of thing. Is the bed in
Yeah.
front of a window? I don't know, whatever it is. Like, what's
Yeah, yeah,
stupid
yeah,
about what we're doing? And I will
yeah.
say that worked out really well. There's a couple things. I wish our garage was a little bit wider. We don't have enough room in between the cars as much as I'd like. And
Mhm.
didn't really realize that we should have put the laundry, like we have a laundry in a hallway. We should have put the washer and dryer in the center and put cabinets on both sides. Instead, we have cabinets on one side and the washer and dryer like right at the door, which gets a little awkward. But those are pretty small
Interesting. Yeah.
things. In the
Yeah.
grand scheme of things, they're not that big. But it's like in hindsight, 2020.
Yeah, that's cool. It's I mean, I love watching a lot of stuff on, like, build our own house and blah blah blah, like all that stuff, right? And it's like, and I know a couple of people that have done it, and some people, one or two folks that I've spoken to, they're like, "Oh man, it's never good enough," right? It's like you do all this stuff and go through
It'll
like
never
kind
be
of every.
perfect.
Yeah, and you're like, "Oh man, I wish I did blah blah blah," and then eventually it turns into like, "Man, I completely hate this," right? I want to do this all again from scratch, and it's like, and then and then you kind of get into that same mechanic, right? And it's
Yeah. It's funny. When we finished, my father-in-law said, "Okay, let's start on the next one," because in the states we have different tax advantages. Where if you live in a house for so long, you can sell it and have a certain amount of profit that's not actually taxable. So theoretically, if you build your own house several times, you can end up living in a house that you get for free, quote unquote, for free at the end.
fair enough.
Um, after we built the house in about 4 months. At the end of that 4 months, I said I could not do this again. This was too much. It was way too intense. I was here all the time doing
Yeah.
everything. Like it was too
Yeah,
much. I'm good. We wanted the weirdest thing, the thing that everybody always finds really weird is we struggled to really find a piece of property, piece of land in the area that we could build on. And I don't know what it's like in the areas that you guys live in, but we utilized Craigslist at the time, and we
that's
actually we
awesome.
had a realtor and everything, and our realtor's like, it's got to be a scam, and I said, we're gonna give you the commission, you make sure it's legit. But we found this on Craigslist, and the guy had bought it from a sheriff's sale. It went through foreclosure and stuff before that, and he
Hmm,
lived a half hour away, never even saw the property, and we got it at a much more affordable price than typical, land would be in our area. So that really
yeah.
helped us out too, and the whole process is thinking outside the box.
That's interesting. I would have
Yeah.
never thought to look at Craigslist for that.
Yeah.
No, no, my father-in-law told me to look, and I was really skeptical at first, but it turned out to be
Yeah,
work out really well for us.
there you go. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, Josh, where can people find you
Yep.
for Josh's smart home? Where can they find Josh's smart home?
Yeah. On YouTube, you can find it at Josh's Smart Home or joshsmarthome.com. I have a website. I also have a couple other YouTube channels that I play around with. I have a Josh Wallet Travels, and just a couple other smaller channels. If I, do some traveling, Disney, Universal cruises, that type of thing, I just put some stuff on there. That has like 100 subscribers, so very tiny and more of just a fun thing that I do. But yeah, main channel is Josh's Smart Home on YouTube.
Great. Well, thank you so much for talking to us today. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for
Yeah,
having me.
thanks
It
so
was a really
much.
great conversation.
Yeah, it really was. Thank you.
Amazing.
Thanks.
Cheers.